during an interval, they actually looked over the balcony. They were in a higher seat, and they looked over the balcony and saw the severed head of a man leering up at them from a lady's lap in the stalls below. Join me on a journey of the West End and some of the most famous theatres in London. 17.1 million of you attended the theatre in London in 2023. That's the nearest statistics I could get. But are you alone? The spiritual and paranormal activity of these theatres has been recorded for so many years, and mostly all in Victorian times, which is slightly suspicious. I wonder if that has anything to do with laudanum or gin consumption. But anyway, let's tell you the stories of some of these magnificent buildings. Let's have a fantastic walk through the West End, and let's explore some of the dark secrets of paranormal activity in the theatre district in London. Now we're starting strong with St. Martin's Lane, which is just off between Charing Cross Road and Trafalgar Square. And probably one of the most famous theatres in London is this stunning building. This is the Colosseum, ladies and gents. Now, at the time, the Colosseum would have been jaw-dropping to Londoners. This magnificent building was, without a question of doubt, the masterpiece of Frank Matcham, and it boasts the largest seating capacity of a theatre in London with 2,558 capacity. It was opened in 1904. Now, two regular ghosts make appearances in the Colosseum, ladies and gents, and one of them is the rather tragic story of a World War I soldier who spent his entire time on leave from the army. He had a slight obsession with a Russian ballerina who was performing inside in the Colosseum. And this was in 1918, and he spent every single night inside there watching her perform. Now, when he returned to action, he was killed practically on the first day he returned to war, on the 3rd of October 1918. And this is when the very first apparition occurred inside the Colosseum. He's said to have been so in love with this particular ballerina, he had a preference for a seat, and they say that seat was actually G8 in the upper circle. Now, he's regularly spotted as people are attending performances and making his way to the G8 upper circle and taking his seat to watch any of the performances. But hauntings of buildings aren't exclusive to actual ghost sighting. But over the years, they've had a lot of paranormal activity in there, including mysterious noises, doors slamming shut, objects being seen flying off the stage during shows, and particularly dogs that have attended any performances or been allowed to attend a performance they've shown quite a lot of anxiety. And we all know animals, particularly dogs and cats, are said to be quite perceptive to, spiritual visions as such, or ghosts. So an icy presence has also been felt quite frequently by any actors and people who have attended shows in this incredible theatre, the Colosseum. So that's one of many stories. Also said to have haunted the area is a lady called Meg the Tea Lady. So two actual resident ghosts. So keep an eye out the next time you're in London and you attend a show here in this beautiful theatre, the Colosseum. Now, next up is right across the road. We have the Duke of York Theatre. Now, the Duke of York was originally known as the Trafalgar Square Theatre, but it was renamed after the then Duke of York, who later became King George V. This one was opened up in 1892, and it is said to be haunted by the eccentric wife of one of the owners. Well, she was joint owner. Her name was Violet Melnotti, and she is often seen in the foyer and the auditorium, but she seems to love attending the buzz, particularly of opening night in the theatre. But she's often seen her ghostly appearance amongst the patrons. But there's one particular story of a cleaner of the theatre and her 6-year-old granddaughter are said to have seen her wearing a tiara entering the royal box. before disappearing then into thin air. There was even a suggestion she attempted to speak and have a conversation with the cleaner's granddaughter. And that's Violet Melanotti, who had a huge history in this area, quite the eccentric but very fashionable lady. I believe she took a young lover at the age of, I think he was 25 and she was something like 72. And society was scandalized by Violet, Violet's new lover and the age difference between them. And I believe that she attempted to adopt him. And the idea was that if she could adopt him, then she could leave him um, the theatre in her will. So that's...
We interrupt your program to bring you a breaking story. Crown & Kingdom is reporting that the Tower of London is currently overrun with ghosts. To find out more, click the link at the end of the following trailer. He was making his rounds and paused to sit on a ledge to relace his shoe. He had just slipped off his right shoe when a voice behind him whispered, "There's only you and I here." Now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Now, before we continue with the theatres, I do want, and I have a request. Some of you are from some of the most amazing places in the world, and there are incredible stories of hauntings in different parts of the world. And I think two that really stick out to me would be Salem, and some people in New Orleans with the voodoo tours they do down there. A lot of you would have some incredible hauntings or paranormal activity and stories to tell. So please, please, please share them with me. I would be so excited to read, especially from all over the world, you guys. So I focused a bit much on the front of the building there, but I wanted to bring you around to the back of the building because the original building wasn't called the Noel Coward Theatre. It was renamed, but they were both owned. The adjacent building behind it, which is the Wyndham Theatre, and they were both owned by a man called Charles Wyndham. And instead of, he had bought this entire property that extended the whole way down, and he had attempted to sell this part of the building. But as the sale actually fell through, he did, as you so casually do, he opened up another theatre here. Now, I guess the one that's most famous, the Noel Coward one, named after, of course, the master of stage and theatre, Noel Coward himself. But let's get back to the stories of ghosts inside in the Noel Coward Theatre. This is from an actress that actually worked in the buildings. And in between shows, they were showing a pantomime. And her boss had asked her to make sure that the upper levels were cleared of people and to bring all the children down to the pantomime onto the lower level. So when she went up to the actual upper level of the balconies, she came across a gentleman who looked like with grey hair. And she was short white hair he had, and he was sitting on the steps bent forward as if watching the show. Now she took a couple of steps towards him, but then she got the sensation that it was really odd and that he wasn't actually real. And before he could turn around and look at her, she froze in terror. She ran away from the balcony. Now, the lady was quoted herself as saying, when she returned to her theatre manager, he said to her, "Oh my God, you're so pale, you look like you've seen a ghost." She was quoted as saying, "He was there, but he wasn't real. There was something wrong. Until I stepped forward, I really believed it was a real person, and I froze and began to shiver, turned and left before he could turn his face towards me. I went straight down to the manager's office and said there was someone in the balcony." Later on, of course, when she went back with one of her managers to investigate, there was absolutely nobody there. And our next theatre is possibly one of the most famous and established in London. And that is the Garrick Theatre, named after the illustrious actor of the 18th century, Now, this theatre was built in the 19th century. Now, this theatre is said to be haunted by an actor manager by the name of Arthur Bouchier, who worked and managed the theatre in the 20th century. You guys, his apparitions are usually backstage, and particularly when the curtain has fallen. Now, Arthur Bouchier, it's kind of a little bit bizarre considering he didn't die in London. He actually died in South Africa. But there is what they call the Phantom Staircase, which is aptly named. That's where most of his apparitions occur. Now, people have spoken all the time about the icy and cold, strange breeze they feel at the bottom of this phantom staircase. And Arthur Bouchier would have been, most people believe, haunt the area quite regularly. So the 1900s and between 1900 and 1915, it was managed by him. Now, although he left the theatre in 1915, his ghost has appeared on numerous occasions backstage. So it went under extensive refurbishment. Excuse me, I know what's wrong with me today. And the ghosts are said to have appeared in the upper levels of the theatre to several of the workmen. And they were the ones that recorded this appearance of him. Now, the ghostly happenings of him, they have identified the particular ghost as Arthur Bouchier, but like every other place, it's experienced so much paranormal activity in there. Noises and banging doors and creeping footsteps, and also that cold sensation or that cold breeze or cold feeling. And that seems to be quite a common part of any paranormal activity, one of which I must admit I experienced myself, you guys, when I worked in a beautiful Victorian mansion in Killarney, County Kerry. And several times psychics had come and visited, and I had given them the guided tour of this beautiful mansion. And many of the psychics, they always reported feeling that terrible sensation and horrible feeling in the children's bedrooms. And so I'm a believer. A lot of people aren't. But let me know your own personal stories. Oh, I have one other to tell, actually. My friend Dawn, she lived in a house in the countryside. She was very young, about 16. And she had said to me there was a ghost in the house. And of course, none of us, we were quite skeptical. And one morning, as two 16-year-old girls were hanging out in the house, after having the time of our life the night before with no parents around, we were sitting downstairs, and I heard distinctly somebody getting out of bed upstairs and walking across the roof on top of us. And she looked at me and she said, "Do you hear that?" I couldn't believe it. I actually 110% heard it. Did not imagine it. It was heavy footsteps walking over our heads, and we were the only two people in the house. So, I mean, I think that these experiences only happen to people who are open to them. Now, we're heading back into the Covent Garden area, and this is probably one of the most famous stories in Theatreland history. Theatreland history. And this is the story of William Terrace, the famous actor here of stage and screen. And this is his plaque. This is the back door of what was called the Adelphi Theatre. Now, the story behind William Terrace we have told before. Now, this is a specific ghost that is said to haunt Covent Garden Station. Now, you see this rather battered kind of coat of arms that's stationed here. So it was at this stage tour where William Terrace, on the 16th of December 1897, he was a very popular actor-manager of the theatre. He arrived here at the stage door. And it was for an evening performance of the play Secret Service, in which he played the lead. And as he unlocked the door, a rival actor who had been ferociously jealous of his success, and in his resentment and fit of rage and jealousy, he stabbed William Terrace to death right at this location, you guys. Now, a crowd immediately gathered around the dying man, and he lay in the arms of his leading lady at the time, a lady he was hopelessly in love with, a Jessica Millward. And as he slipped into unconscious, Terrace had whispered his barely audible last words to Jessica, "I will be back." So in 1928, to add more mystery to the story, right down this rather creepy corner here in Maiden Lane, a tourist was walking down here, and she said she encountered a man figure dressed in kind of old-fashioned Victorian clothing heading towards her. And he was about to make some comment she was about to make some comment to him about his outdated fashion sense when the figure suddenly vanished right down this laneway into thin air. Later, when she was showing the tourist a picture of William Terrace, she immediately identified him as the man she saw in the laneway. But one afternoon, another actress was resting inside in one of the dressing rooms, inside here in the Adelphi Theatre. And between performances, she was gripped by the arms, and the chaise longue on which she was laying was violently thrust from side to side. And a mysterious green light apparently appeared above the dressing room mirror, and that's where the two loud raps had appeared to come from behind the mirror. And then it all went quiet again, and she later discovered that the dressing room that she was in was the one that Jessica Millward, the actress, and girlfriend of William Terrace, used to occupy. And whenever he passed it, Terrace would always knock on the door twice. So William Terrace is the ghost that's said to haunt Covent Garden station, because he is also the man who, there used to be the location of a bakery where William Terrace used to frequent on the current site of Covent Garden station. And he has appeared in there for over 40 years. So he well and truly did return to the residence. Now, I guess one of the most famous actresses in the period of the restoration of the monarchy was Nell Gwynn. And this is one of London's hidden gems down this side street, the Nell Gwynn pub, you guys. Now, this also has had its own mysterious phantom inside the pub. Now, the story about this amazing pub is that they felt, the staff in there have felt a strange coldness in the air, while several gentlemen have felt a hand tap them on the back, trouser pocket, on their back bum actually, but turned to find nobody there. Now, a medium once told a landlord that she could see herself a man in a cloth cap standing by the stairs, and sensed that he was very pleased with the way this pub was being run. So she also said that should the man ever be unhappy with the way his pub was being treated, he would stop at nothing to drive away those he held responsible. Interestingly, in recent years, several landlords who attempted to change the pub's appearance ended up leaving for unspecific reasons, you guys. So that is the haunting of the Nell Gwynn pub. And we will be talking in depth about the Lyceum Theatre later on as well on the tour, where she spent most of her time on stage. I'm going to continue on and back up the street here because it's worth a mention, because this incredible restaurant, although not a theatre, but part of London's major history, is one of the oldest English restaurants in the world. And this is the very elegant, the very sophisticated Rules. Now, Rules has a rather bizarre phantom that apparently haunts the loos in here. Now, the oldest English restaurant in the world, a very elegant dining experience, a true British establishment and a staple of Covent Garden's history. You will have seen Rules in several movies and shows, particularly where Edith and Mary come for several dates. So apparently, It's actually the loos in here which are haunted. And a favourite haunt of writers and actors, it has a wonderful atmosphere, but a modest, ghostly prankster haunts the ladies' toilets, adding to the ambience of such a special place. And often a certain cubicle door has been known to slam shut and the toilet heard to flush, despite the fact that there is never anybody in there. This gorgeous, gorgeous establishment, you guys. So if you want to treat yourself, Rules is the place to go. Now we're going to head around to two more theatres in Covent Garden, you guys. But I guess this is the most famous theatre in London, without a question or doubt, ladies and gents. This is the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. Now it is the oldest working theatre in London. It's coming up here in the corner. And reputedly, the most haunted. And it's in here where King Charles II, the Merry Monarch, fell hopelessly in love with Nell Gwynn, the famous orange seller and actress. Now, bear in mind at the time, actors and actresses wouldn't have had much more social standing in society above the ladies of the night themselves. So it was a rather big deal that they actually fell in love at the time, and it was a bit of a scandal. But so the current building we're looking at right now dates to 1812, but the original building was founded on the site in 1663. And keeping with the tradition of older ghosts in the area, the one in particular that keeps popping up here is the Man in Grey. Now, the Man in Grey is a limping apparition, and he's seen wearing a powdered rake, grey riding cloak, and a three-cornered hat. And he often appears only at successful West End productions inside the building. So it's actually a good omen to see him prior to the beginning of a production because, well, he guarantees their success. So some of the best and most successful here that have run here over the years are the King and I, the South Pacific, and Oklahoma. And he's definitely given an endorsement to them. Whereas the longest running one, Miss Saigon, and that was blessed with an appearance each time there was a change of cast. So, but his identity is up for debate. Now, there's a couple of theories as to who he is. Some suggest he is a manifestation of a chap called Arnold Woodruff, who was murdered at the theatre by another rival actor again called Charles Macklin about 200 years ago. But another theory is that when it was being refurbished in the 19th century, the theatre, a bricked up room was actually discovered, and inside there they found the skeleton of a man with a dagger protruding through his chest, and he was wrapped in a grey cloak. So some would suggest that that seems to be him, because he seems to make an appearance but then seems to dash through the wall back into where that coffin is located. But he is supposed to be quite mischievous as well. If actors are struggling to deliver their lines, he gives them a shove or pushes them on. He pushes them in proper positions. He's also said to take afternoon strolls on the stage and across the stage in front of an entire matinee audience. So this man, the Man in Grey, is the stuff of theatrical legends all over London, ladies and gents. And that is the most famous theatre in London, the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. Now, our final little ghostly haunting of theatres in London involves the theatre right down here called the Lyceum Theatre. Now, the Lyceum is very famous because it was managed over the years by Bram Stoker himself. And he would have frequented the fabulous pub around the corner called the Lyceum Tavern. So the Lyceum Theatre has been showing The Lion King. God, how many years is that showing? You can look that up for me and let me know. But our final stop today is one of a rather grotesque apparition, and that is of the ghost with the severed head in her lap. Rather terrifying apparition that was witnessed inside in this theatre in the 1880s. Now, this theatre has seen So many incredible productions in its history. Bob Marley and the Wailers performed live down there. I believe U2 would have performed live in that theatre at some stage as well. But it was in the 1880s when the apparition was seen, but it was also made very famous by Henry Irving, and Ellen Terry would have performed in lavish productions of Shakespeare's plays on stage in here. But one couple, however, were treated to a very grisly apparition inside the Lyceum Theatre. I wonder if the kids knew this when they were heading to their matinee performances of The Lion King. Don't want to scare the living daylights out of them. During an interval, they actually looked over the balcony. They were in a higher seat, and they looked over the balcony and saw the severed head of a man leering up at them from a lady's lap in the stalls below. So they were obviously curious and wanted to investigate further. So they headed downstairs and attempted to approach the woman after the performance, but actually lost her in the crowd. Now, some years later, the husband happened to visit a house in Yorkshire where, to his surprise, he saw a portrait of a man, what a coincidence, whose face was identical to the one that he had seen in the Lyceum Theatre. So when he asked who the man was, he was told it was an ancestor of the owner of a house who had been beheaded for treason. And his family had actually owned the land on which this Lyceum Theatre was actually built. So, the severed head of a man. Now, that is a rather grisly appearance and probably one of the most terrifying. But this beautiful theatre, again, established in 1834. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've had an enjoyable time joining me on this little tour of London's theatres and most famous goats in the area. Now, this is one of many tours to come. I have another couple planned, but they're a bit more grisly and they won't be for the faint-hearted. But for right now, here in Aldwych, in London, this is Sinead signing out. A very spooky theatre tour of London. Has it changed your mind? Now, about visiting the theatre in London, don't forget to send me your messages. And I want to hear all about your spooky tales and your paranormal experiences. Sinead signing out here in London. Please, if you have enjoyed this, please don't forget to comment and like and subscribe. It really does help us. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one that I'll be filming this week. Thanks for joining me, you guys. See you soon. Sinead signing out in Theatreland.